The silent battle. There is a battle that rages in silence. It does not announce itself with war drums or trumpets. It doesn't make the news. It doesn't trend online. And yet, it is one of the fiercest battles a human soul can face. It is the battle of keeping faith when everything inside of you feels like it is falling apart. This battle is not visible to others. You could be surrounded by people, smiling on the outside, functioning well in your job, attending church every Sunday, and still be silently bleeding on the inside. The weight is not in what others see, but in what they don't. And in that hidden weight, the enemy whispers the most dangerous lies: you are alone. No one understands. God has forgotten you. But friend, hear this: just because the world cannot see your battle, does not mean God is unaware of it. God sees the tears you cry behind closed doors. He sees the questions that echo in your mind at night. He sees the strength it takes to keep going, to hold on to hope, to keep praying even when you hear nothing back. Psalm 34 verse 18 tells us, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." This means that God is not repelled by your brokenness, He is drawn to it. While others may turn away when you fall apart, God leans in closer. The weight no one sees. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with stones. Every disappointment adds a rock. Every betrayal, another one. Every unanswered prayer, more weight. And still, we walk. Not because we are strong, but because we have no other choice. You pray, but the heavens feel silent. You worship, but the breakthrough doesn't come. You believe, but the circumstances don't change. And all the while, the enemy tries to convince you that your faith is failing, that God is distant, and that you are doing something wrong. But what if this season isn't punishment? What if it's preparation? What if your silent battle is not a sign of abandonment, but an invitation to intimacy with God? Because the truth is, God does His deepest work in the hidden places. Faith in the furnace. Think of the 3 Hebrew boys in Daniel 3. They were thrown into a furnace, not because they lacked faith, but because they had unshakable faith. And it was in the fire that God showed up visibly. Sometimes, the fire you're walking through isn't proof that God has left. It's proof that He is about to reveal Himself in a new way. God never wastes a fire. He never wastes a tear. He never wastes a battle. Every cry, every question, every step you take in the dark matters to Him. The hidden work of God. In John 11, when Lazarus died, Mary and Martha sent for Jesus. But He delayed. He didn't come right away. To them, it felt like abandonment. But in reality, it was a setup for a greater glory. Jesus said in John 11 verse 4, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory so that God's Son may be glorified through it." God often works in ways we don't understand. His silence is not absence. His delay is not denial. Sometimes He waits so that what looks dead can be raised in a way that makes it undeniable. Only God could do this. So if you're in a season where everything feels heavy, where prayers seem unanswered, where your soul is tired and your heart is weary, you are not disqualified. You are not forgotten. You are being refined. You are being prepared. And one day, what was once a place of deep pain will become a platform of powerful testimony. God is not just watching your silent battle. He is fighting with you in it. Stay close. Stay honest. Stay in His word. Because even in silence, He is still speaking. When the pressure builds, pressure doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. It creeps in like a slow fog until your soul feels heavy and your thoughts become tangled. It shows up in small ways, in the inability to focus, in short tempers, in the tears that fall for no clear reason. Pressure doesn't knock. It accumulates. And before you know it, your heart is overwhelmed, and you're not even sure why. Pressure is a silent weight. You carry it into the office. You bring it into the sanctuary. You feel it even while laughing with friends. And it's not because you lack faith, it's because life is heavy. We live in a culture of noise and demands. You're expected to be everything for everyone: competent, kind, productive, put together, joyful, available. And yet, you feel like you're running on empty. But here is the truth: you were never meant to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You were meant to lay it at the feet of Jesus. The illusion of control. One of the greatest sources of pressure is the illusion that we are in control. We think that if we just try harder, do more, plan better, we can keep everything from falling apart. But eventually, we hit a wall. We realize we are not limitless. We grow tired. And that's when the grace of God steps in. Matthew 11 verse 28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Jesus never told us to carry it all. He told us to come. When pressure builds, God doesn't hand you a heavier load, He invites you into His rest. He doesn't say, "Try harder." He says, "Abide in me." Breaking points and breakthroughs. There are moments when the pressure becomes too great and something gives way. Maybe it's your patience. Maybe it's your body. Maybe it's your faith. And yet, the breaking point is often the birthplace of breakthrough. The Israelites were under immense pressure in Egypt. It wasn't until their groans reached heaven that deliverance came. Exodus 2 verses 23 to 25. Pressure is often a precursor to promise. But not because pressure is good in itself, rather because God uses pressure to position you for His power. When life squeezes you, what's inside you comes out. And sometimes, God allows the pressure to reveal the places where you've been relying on yourself instead of Him. From crushing to calling. In Gethsemane, Jesus experienced pressure so intense that his sweat became like drops of blood. He asked the Father to take the cup from him, but also surrendered, "Yet not my will, but yours be done." Luke 22 verse 42. The pressure of Gethsemane preceded the power of resurrection. You may feel crushed right now, but what if the crushing is releasing something sacred within you? Olives are pressed to produce oil. Grapes are crushed to make wine. You are not being destroyed. You are being prepared. Anointed. Released. Let the pressure drive you not into panic, but into prayer. Not into striving, but surrender. God is not looking at you with disappointment. He is looking at you with compassion. He knows your limits, and He is your limitless source. So when the pressure builds, don't collapse. Lean. Lean into His presence. Lean into His promises. Lean into the one who never fails. Because God is not intimidated by pressure. He transforms it. The God who stands. When life shakes, when everything you thought was stable begins to tremble, there is one truth that holds firm: God does not move. The winds may howl. The ground may shake. The storm may rage. But God remains. He is not shaken by your fear. He is not overwhelmed by your crisis. He is not startled by your struggle. Psalm 62 verse 6 declares, "Truly He is my rock and my salvation, He is my fortress, I will not be shaken." The unshakable foundation. When a building is constructed, the most important part is not the roof or the walls, it's the foundation. Because the strength of everything else depends on what it's built on. Your life was never meant to be built on circumstances, feelings, or finances. All of those can change. But God never changes. He is your solid ground. Hebrews 13 verse 8 says, "Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever." When the world is unstable, we need a faith that is not circumstantial. We need a God who is constant. And we have one. Holding steady in the storm. In Matthew 7, Jesus tells the story of two houses, one built on sand, one built on rock. The storms came to both. The winds blew against both. But only one house remained standing, the one built on the rock. Notice something important: God does not promise a life without storms. He promises to be the foundation that holds when the storm hits. Some of you are in a storm right now. And maybe everything feels like it's shifting. But if your foundation is Jesus, you will not fall. You may bend. You may tremble, but you will not break. Because God stands firm, and He holds you steady. God is your defender. Sometimes we feel the need to fight every battle, prove every point, fix every problem. But what if part of standing strong is knowing when to let God defend you? Exodus 14 verse 14 says, "The Lord will fight for you, you need only to be still." You don't always need to retaliate. You don't always need to respond. You don't always need to explain yourself. There are moments when the most powerful stance you can take is not striving, but standing. Standing in faith. Standing in truth. Standing in trust. God is not passive. He is not idle. He is your shield, your defender, and your protector. While you're standing, He's moving. Surrounded but safe. Think of Elisha's servant in 2 Kings 6. He woke up and saw the enemy army surrounding them and was filled with fear. But Elisha prayed, "Open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see." And when the servant's eyes were opened, he saw that the hills were full of horses and chariots of fire, God's heavenly army, surrounding them. You may feel surrounded by problems, but you are also surrounded by God's presence. He is with you in the courtroom. He is with you in the hospital room. He is with you in the waiting room. And He stands firm, not just beside you, but before you, behind you, and within you. The rock that cannot be moved. Friend, when everything else feels uncertain, plant your feet on the rock. Stand on His promises. Stand on His truth. Stand on His love. God will not move. And because He won't, you don't have to either. He is the God who stands. He is the Rock of Ages. He is your stability when all else gives way. So lift your eyes above the waves. Raise your shield of faith. And know this, no storm can shake a life that stands on the unshakable God. Part 4, Chosen in the Shadows. Before God puts you on display, He often places you in obscurity. In a world addicted to visibility and applause, we forget that some of God's greatest works are done in silence. In the background. In the unseen spaces. God does not need a stage to anoint someone. He needs surrender. And sometimes, His most powerful preparation happens in places where no one is watching. The story of Shamgar. In Judges 3 verse 31, we find a man named Shamgar. He is mentioned only once in the entire Bible. No army. No title. No famous lineage. And yet, he delivered Israel with nothing but an ox goad, a farming tool. God used someone nobody expected with something nobody respected to do something everybody needed. What does that tell us? You don't need a spotlight to carry significance. You don't need a platform to have power. God sees your fight. He sees your faithfulness in the field, even when it seems forgotten. And He often chooses those hidden in the shadows to carry His greatest victories. The wilderness before the calling. Before David ever faced Goliath, he was tending sheep in solitude. Before Moses stood before Pharaoh, he was hiding in the desert. Before Jesus began His public ministry, He spent 40 days in the wilderness. The wilderness is not punishment. It is preparation. It is in the quiet, isolated places that God refines your identity, reshapes your confidence, and roots your character. Don't despise the hidden seasons. Embrace them. Because when God hides you, He is building something in you that the world cannot see, but will one day need. God sees what others miss. Maybe you feel like no one sees your effort. No one applauds your service. No one acknowledges your tears. But friend, God does. Matthew 6 verse 4 reminds us, "Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." God sees what's done in silence and rewards it in His time. That quiet act of obedience. That unnoticed sacrifice. That prayer when no one was looking. It matters. And it is not forgotten. Not rejected, refined. Sometimes we think that being hidden means being rejected. But with God, hiddenness often means refinement. The olive must be pressed before the oil flows. The gold must be refined before it shines. The servant must be trained before they are sent. God does not rush development. He invests in it. And if you're in a season where you feel overlooked, underused, or passed over, it may be because God is doing something deeper than others can see. He is forming within you the strength, wisdom, and depth you will need when the time comes. You are chosen, even if it's not yet public. Before Jesus chose his 12 disciples, he spent the night in prayer. He didn't choose based on popularity, appearance, or influence. He chose based on purpose. And God has chosen you not because of what you can do, but because of what he wants to do through you. Your hiddenness is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a chapter called Becoming. So keep walking. Keep serving. Keep sowing seeds where no one claps, because God is watching. And when the time is right, the one who sees in secret will reward you openly. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are not left behind. You are chosen in the shadows. Part 5, Wrestling with God, VTLNC Binai. There are moments when your soul wrestles with something deeper than you can explain. You pray, but the answer doesn't come. You believe, yet the situation seems unchanged. You try to stand, but the weight keeps pressing. And in those moments, it can feel like God is silent, absent, distant. But what if he is closer than ever? What if your wrestle isn't a rejection, but a divine invitation? The night of struggle. In Genesis 32, Jacob was left alone. And it was in that solitude that he encountered God. A mysterious figure wrestled with him until daybreak. Jacob wasn't just fighting for survival, he was fighting for identity. All his life, he had lived as a deceiver, a runner, a manipulator. But that night, God was not going to let him continue in that false identity. They wrestled. Jacob clung. And as dawn broke, God touched his hip, leaving him with a limp, but also with a blessing. He received a new name, Israel. Not the deceiver, but the one who wrestles with God and overcomes. Wrestling is not rejection. We often think that when we struggle, it means we've failed. But in God's kingdom, wrestling is often the path to revelation. It is where facades fall. It is where truth emerges. It is where identity is redefined. God could have overpowered Jacob easily, but he allowed the wrestle. Why? Because God knew that in the wrestling, Jacob would be changed. Limping but blessed. Some of us come out of struggles with a spiritual limp. Maybe it's a scar from a broken season. Maybe it's a change in the way we walk with God. But that limp is not shame, it's a sign of surrender. It's proof that you encountered God and lived. The world looks for people who are polished. God looks for people who are marked. And when you've wrestled in the dark and held on through the breaking, you carry something no performance can imitate, authentic faith. From striving to clinging. Notice that Jacob didn't win by overpowering. He won by clinging. He said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Genesis 32 verse 26. That's not a statement of arrogance. That's a cry of desperation. And sometimes, the greatest faith you can express is not in bold declarations, but in broken clinging. When you hold on even though you don't understand. When you choose not to walk away, even when you have every reason to. That is faith refined. The blessing in the breaking. You may be in a season where you're wrestling. With doubt. With direction. With grief. With God himself. And you wonder, will anything good come from this? The answer is yes. Because God never wastes the wrestle. What you learn in the dark will shape how you walk in the light. What breaks you today may birth a new identity tomorrow. And what wounds you may one day become the very place where healing flows for others. Meeting God face to face. At the end of his wrestle, Jacob named the place Peniel, saying, "I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." Genesis 32 verse 30. That is what the wrestle does, it reveals God not just as a distant figure, but as one who meets us in our struggle. He is not afraid of your questions. He is not offended by your honesty. He welcomes the wrestle. Because in the wrestle, pride dies. Masks fall. Truth surfaces. And the transformation begins. So don't despise your night of wrestling. Don't rush through the process. God is working in the tension. He is renaming you. He is releasing you. And though you may walk with a limp, you will also walk with a legacy. Part 6, Restoration from the Inside Out, SPHCHIBTUT Ben Trong. Sometimes, it's not your body that feels the most tired. It's your soul. You go through the motions. You show up. You keep the smile. But deep down, there's an exhaustion no nap can fix, a weariness that sleep can't solve. It's the tiredness that comes from holding on too long. From pouring out without being filled. From silently surviving when you hope to be thriving. And that's when God steps in, not just to lift your burdens, but to restore your inner being. God heals from the inside first. The world treats symptoms. God treats the source. When you bring your soul to Him, wounded, weary, worn, He doesn't shame it. He embraces it. Psalm 23 verse 3 says, He restores my soul. Not just your schedule. Not just your strength. Your soul. That's where true restoration begins. Elijah's moment of collapse. In 1 Kings 19, the prophet Elijah had just faced a massive spiritual battle. He called down fire from heaven. He witnessed God's power firsthand. But shortly after, fear and exhaustion overtook him. He ran. He collapsed under a tree. And he prayed for death. This wasn't a lack of faith. This was the cost of the fight. But instead of rebuking Elijah, God restored him. He sent an angel, not with a sermon, but with a meal. Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you. 1 Kings 19 verse 7. Sometimes, what you need most is not another task, but divine rest. God restores through care. Through nourishment. Through compassion. He doesn't yell at the weary. He feeds them. Layer by layer. Restoration doesn't always come all at once. Sometimes it's layer by layer, piece by piece. You may not feel strong overnight. But every breath you take in His presence, every time you open the Word, every honest prayer, it's restoring you. He's healing the parts of you that others don't even see. The disappointments you've buried. The dreams you've shelved. The fears you've carried silently. God is not just rebuilding your energy, He's rebuilding your essence. Restoration is not going back. Sometimes, we think restoration means returning to how things used to be. But God doesn't restore you to your past. He restores you for your future. He doesn't rewind. He renews. The new strength He gives is not a copy of what you lost. It's deeper. Stronger. Wiser. It's forged through fire and watered with grace. You are not being patched up. You are being made new. Isaiah 43 verse 19 says, See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up, do you not perceive it? Restoration prepares you to walk again. After Elijah was fed and rested, Scripture says he traveled 40 days and nights to the mountain of God. The strength God gave him was not just for surviving, it was for continuing. God doesn't just restore you so you can exist. He restores you so you can move. Speak again. Dream again. Hope again. You may have been through hell. But restoration means heaven still has plans for you. So breathe deep. Stand tall. Lift your head. You are being restored from the inside out. Part 7, The Voice in the Chaos, Ting Noigah and Lon. There is something sacred about the voice of God. Not just when it echoes in the sanctuary, but when it whispers in the storm. Not just when we are still and calm, but when everything around us is shaking. Because God is not waiting for silence to speak, He speaks through the noise. Hearing God in the middle of confusion. Isaiah 30 verse 21 says, "Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you, saying, 'This is the way, walk in it.'" God's voice doesn't wait until we have it all figured out. It guides us while we're still choosing, while the path is still unclear, while the tears are still falling. He speaks not just to inform, but to transform. The power of God's whisper. In 1 Kings 19, Elijah was hiding in a cave, overwhelmed and afraid. God told him to stand on the mountain. Then came a wind, an earthquake, and fire, but God was not in any of those. Then came a still small voice. The voice that didn't roar, but restored. Sometimes, God's most powerful words come in the quietest ways. You may expect him to show up with drama, but he often comes with depth. His whisper can do what no thunder ever could. It pierces the soul. It calms the storm within. Discernment in the disruption. When chaos surrounds you, it's easy to become distracted by every voice, fear, anxiety, regret, shame. But the voice of God doesn't add confusion. It brings clarity. It does not condemn, it convicts. It doesn't drive you to strive, it draws you to surrender. And it never leads to fear, it leads to faith. So how do you hear that voice? Not by being perfect. Not by escaping the storm. But by becoming still within it. Psalm 46 verse 10 reminds us, "Be still, and know that I am God." Stillness is not the absence of motion. It's the posture of trust. When God speaks, everything shifts. In Genesis 1, the world was formless and void until God spoke. His word brought light, order, and purpose. That same creative power is still active. When God speaks into your chaos, he doesn't just calm the storm, he calls forth destiny. He says, "Let there be. Let there be peace in your mind. Let there be healing in your heart. Let there be strength in your soul. Let there be clarity where there was only confusion." Your storm will not silence his voice. The disciples once found themselves in a boat, caught in a violent storm. Jesus stood and rebuked the wind and waves with just 3 words, "Peace, be still." Mark 4 verse 39. And immediately, the storm obeyed. Whatever is raging around you today, debt, diagnosis, disappointment, know this, it still answers to the voice of Jesus. Your chaos is not more powerful than his command. Lean in and listen. God is speaking. Even now. In your fear, he is speaking. In your questions, he is speaking. In your silence, he is speaking. So lean in. Tune out the lies. Shut down the noise. And open your heart. Because the same voice that spoke light into darkness is speaking life over you now. You are not lost. You are being led. You are not abandoned. You are being guided. And you are not in chaos. You are in the presence of a God who still speaks. What you've walked through is real. The pain. The silence. The weight. The waiting. But so is the presence of God. He is not only near when the breakthrough comes. He is present in the in-between. In the shadows. In the wrestle. In the pressure. And in the silence, he is forming a strength in you that cannot be shaken. You are not who you were. You are becoming who he created you to be. Let this journey remind you that even when the battle is hidden, even when the chaos is loud, even when the pressure rises, God is still speaking. And if you listen closely, you will hear him call you by your true name. Beloved. Chosen. Restored. Strong. Now, rise and walk in the truth. You are not alone. You are not defeated. You are divinely held and divinely led. God is with you. Always.